This is Dr. Rich Shuttler back with you again with the program of Taking the Butt Out of All But Dissertation. This is lesson number 4 in the series of 12 lessons about how to write your chapter 4 in your doctoral dissertation. In particular, this is part 2 of 5 lessons that deal specifically with presenting qualitative data in chapter 4. In this lesson, I will give information about presenting qualitative themes in the chapter. As you can see by this slide, of the 12 lessons, if you're listening to these in order, I've already covered the first 3, which is the introduction to the series, information about the pilot test and the field test, also information about presenting qualitative data in the first part of this 5-part series, where I addressed information about how to present based on interview questions, the demographics, and themes or questions that could be produced in your chapter 4. In particular, as I mentioned, this is lesson 4 of 12, presenting qualitative data, part 2 of 5, presenting qualitative themes. In this lesson, I will address presenting those qualitative themes in chapter 4, give you some insights basically on how you might consider constructing your own chapter. I'll provide 3 examples from 3 of my doctoral students who went on to graduate, so you can see what others have done and perhaps to be able to emulate what others have found to be successful. And I'll conclude with a reflective summary, as I always do, to help review the most salient points of the lesson so that perhaps you can remember it a little bit more longer and be able to gain the insights that you need to take away with you. So as you decide how to put your chapter together, in case you need to come back to these lessons, you'll know exactly where to find the information. Presenting qualitative themes is dependent on a number of different items, and I'll address several of those now for you. The first one is, how many research and sub-questions do you have in your dissertation? Now, I'm a big believer in most qualitative work that sub-questions are not needed. I like to include the information from sub-questions into interview questions and then provide that in the overall analysis of the dissertation data. Now, you may have sub-questions, and that's fine. There's many good reasons to have them. But depending on how many research questions you have and how many sub-questions you have, that may determine how you're going to put your qualitative themes together. For example, if you only have 2 central research questions, or maybe even 1, how you analyze your data is going to be different in how you report it as compared to if you had 5 different sub-questions, because you would have to analyze data based on those 5 sub-questions before you could answer the regular central research question. So again, it's dependent, and as you start to plan your work, make sure that you work closely with your dissertation chair to make sure that your lesson strategy is appropriate for how to present the data in your chapter. As you can see, one of my mentees included a table, Table 2, case study, research questions, interview questions, and proposed data analysis. Now, this student did what I believe added value to his chapter 4 by showing exactly how research question number 1, how do stakeholders' perceptions differ regarding the severity of the intensive care unit nurse shortage in Oman. Here you can see he has 4 interview questions that align with research question number 1. You can also see the type of data that came from open-ended questions, and he also provides here in chapter 4, and while he's not going into any great detail in this table, you can see that by the analysis, he had a content analysis by 3 graduate-trained coders, Cronbach Alpha tested for reliability, and theme frequencies. This table provides what I believe a value-added perspective to his chapter. Another thing that is dependent upon how you present your qualitative themes is going to be based on the importance of the themes generated. Oftentimes, because you and your peers who do research are experts, you have gone through the body of knowledge and you're well familiar with what's in that body of knowledge. There are times that when you do research, that something unique is going to happen, and it's going to be something you didn't anticipate. Let's just say, for example, from your study, the themes generated produced one theme, and it may not be the most common theme generated, but yet it's a theme that is not well written and provided for in the body of knowledge. This might mean that this theme is important beyond the other themes. And what I mean by that is perhaps you had 18 people that you interviewed, and the theme generated that was unique to your research and not found in other studies was generated by only 6 out of the 18 people, but yet a theme nonetheless. And you had themes that were generated by others that had more frequency, meaning that perhaps 12 out of the 18 people interviewed generated a theme. Well, the theme that you want to write about first might be the one that is unexpected because it may be the most important of the themes. There's many different ways in Chapter 4 to design your chapter based around the themes, and it's not always the most frequently generated theme. Then there is the most frequently generated theme method, and that could be weighting of the themes generated. So if you had 18 people that you interviewed, and there were themes generated from 12 people, another one from 9 people, another one from 6 people, another one from 3 people, putting them in that order suggests that you're weighting them by the frequency of how often somebody had something to say about that theme. That may be the most logical way, but it's not always the most practical way. Remember, the outcome of a dissertation research study is often found in that one item that comes out of the study that nobody expected. Here you'll see one of my mentees put the themes together in Table 3, and the themes and the frequencies for the interview question number 1. You can see the themes generated on the left-hand side in the darker blue with the white letters. And then you'll see N as a number how many people were involved in generating that theme, and then the percentage of how many people involved in the entire study. So for example, in theme number 1, it's listed here, the majority make ethical decisions. There was 6 out of the people interviewed, or 42% of the people had something to say about the majority make ethical decisions. As compared to the lower theme at the bottom, which is unethical decisions are covered by the media, there, while it still generated a theme, it was only generated by 3 people, or 21%. So you can see here he has these themes generated by frequency of order, from top to bottom. Now, oftentimes, the themes generate keyword frequencies that emerge from the analysis. This may not necessarily always be a theme. It could be a theme, but oftentimes when you do your data analysis, particularly when you put all your transcripts into NVivo and run it, you may find several keywords being generated that, while not themes of themselves, are reflective of something that researchers who are going to read your work or the practitioner might find of value. Keywords are very important, particularly in today's search engine optimization, because you could take the keywords and put them into Google Alerts and be alerted anytime something's published in any of those keywords. Oftentimes, presenting qualitative themes is computed by the percentage of the frequency. As you noticed in the prior slide that I have with the table, they were by the numbers and the percentages, and oftentimes it's that frequency or percentage that people want to see. Here you'll see in this slide comparison of percentage of keyword frequency identified in the first group to the second group demonstrates saturation of data for this section. Now I'm going to show you for the first part, and I'm going to show you the second part of this table in a moment. But here in Table 5, you'll see for question number 1 the word query comparison by group keyword. Here you'll see participants number 1 through 13, how the words lavender, peppermint, aromatic therapy, and Reiki came out in the keyword percentages. You could see lavender had 1.07, peppermint 1.17, aromatherapy 1.37, and Reiki 0.98%. Now keep these numbers in mind because I'm going to show you a little bit more information. But first I want to share with you that oftentimes qualitative themes are generated before and after saturation, in particular for phenomenological studies. So how does this happen, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. Let's say you are one of my mentees and you started collecting your data in a phenomenological design. And I encourage you to interview 12 people before you put anything to NVivo software. Let's say at the end of your 12th interview, you put all the information into NVivo software and it generates a number of themes. Then I ask you, now go do 3 more interviews, put that data into NVivo software and see if any new themes are emerged, and then let me know. Well, if you did that, you would have information from before and after. And let's just say on those next 3 interviews that you ran the data, nothing new would emerge. So then you would see you would have the same information that was there before, but now you also see you had participants 14, 15, and 16 added here. So the first 13 was from collecting the data, then you ran the information, then you were able to take 14, 15, and 16 and run the information, find that no new themes were emerging. And now you have a comparison based on the first 13 to the final 3. Now, presenting qualitative themes, there has to be some narrative. You have to give some information how the theme was generated. What does the theme mean? And then give some support and justification by quotes from the authors. And so think about what could you write in a couple paragraphs about each theme that was generated. I encourage you, stay consistent. However you write information about the first theme, use the same type of approach for any other subsequent themes that you write about. But you are going to provide some sort of narrative, and of course you're going to have these in full paragraph form, 3 to 7 sentences per paragraph, as prescribed by the APA manual to make sure that your content flows well. Here's one such example. The comparison of keyword prevalence in the first group of interviews, n equals 13, as you saw on the slide before, with the second round of interviews, n equals 3, was completed for each interview question to determine theoretical saturation of data collection. Once saturation was demonstrated within each question, with the completion of the word prevalence analysis, all interviews n equals 16 were analyzed for node identification and theme immersion. This is the type of narrative that we would be looking for you to generate based on your numbers in the interviews that you conducted. Now, as you write that information, we're always going to be looking for numbers and percentages. Don't just tell us that 15 out of 16 had something to say. Tell us 15 out of 16, then put the percentage. If you had 8 out of 16, you would put the number 8 and then in parentheses 50%. If you had 16 out of 16, you would indicate 16 with 100%. And I'll show you yet a couple more examples of that. All too often, what happens in the early drafts is students only put one or the other, either numbers or percentages, or sometimes I've seen where they mix them up. Stay consistent, and I encourage you to always put numbers written and then in parentheses the percentages. You will have quotes from the survey population when presenting qualitative themes, because at first you're going to give a narrative with some supporting information, then you're going to give evidence of how that theme came to be by quoting the survey participants. You're not going to quote from literature anymore. The only quoting that you're going to do in Chapter 4 in this area is from the actual interviewees themselves. You'll never use their name, but you'll put their code. Let's say, for example, they were participant number 5. So it might be P5 had something to say, and then you quote it. Tables and figures are popular in Chapter 4 in pretty much every dissertation. You've already seen a couple tables that I suggested. You may have a couple figures as well. It depends on what you're going to provide and how you're going to present it. But I encourage you, as you put your tables in there, make sure they're formatted as per the APA and that they have the right caption and the right numbering. Caution: find a logical approach for one theme, then repeat it. Don't change it up. All too often in the early drafts of Chapter 4, as I see in qualitative studies, they present information about a theme, and then maybe they'll have a table or a figure, and maybe they won't have anything more. Then the next one they'll have narrative and no table or figure, and maybe just a wrap up of how many people were included to generate that theme. Now, stay consistent. Whatever you do for one of them, stay consistent. Do it for all the themes generated. One, it'll help you to devise your work easier because you're basically emulating the style from one to another. Also, it's helpful for the reader to see the same repetition, because as they read the first one, the second one, the third one, it makes it easier to understand the content that you're writing about. So find that logical approach. And one of the things I encourage you to do, again, is go to ProQuest dissertations. Go to look under those published within the last 6 or 12 months from your university and your same research design, and see how they structured their themes. Consider emulating their theme, process, and flow into your own work, because you already know if that was recently approved by your university, chances are if you emulate the same process and theme pattern development, you're going to do just as well. Now I'm going to show you some examples from a few of my mentees who have gone on Majority of my mentees do get their work approved on the first time, and that's because they put a lot of work and effort into it. And even as you see in this lesson, by putting the tables in, they're adding value to their work. Now, they all own the copyright on their dissertations. They have allowed me and given me permission to use their work for this program to help you. I own the copyright on this program, but they own the copyright on their dissertations. And that's why I always give their name and dissertation title, as I'm doing here with Dr. Dustin Pollock, who graduated in 2011 with his dissertation, A Phenomenological Study: The Influence of Professional Athletes' Unethical Behavior on Amateur Athletes. Here, Dr. Pollock, in his dissertation, Chapter 4, provided this narrative, as you can see here, where he wrote 28 themes were identified. To substantiate the validity and reliability of these 28 themes, a kappa coefficients were evaluated using the guidelines outlined in Landis and Koch 1977, where the strength of the kappa coefficients equaled 0, less than no, 0, less than no, or 000, no, or 0.01 to 0.20, slight, and he goes on to fair, and he gives you the whole breakout of how he looked at that. Of the 28 themes, 2 had slight agreement, 1 had fair agreement, 6 had moderate agreements, 7 had substantial agreements, and 7 had almost perfect agreement. And he went in to indicate that the kappa coefficients are presented in Appendix G. Now, he could have easily taken this information and also put it into a table. He went on to indicate, interview question 1 asks, what is your perception of professional athletes' ethical decision making? Here he writes, 4 themes were recognized in response to question number 1. Here we see Dr. Pollock continued with the interview question 1 asked, what is your perception of professional athletes' ethical decision making? 4 themes were recognized in response to question 1. 6, or 43%, participants commented that professional athletes make ethical decisions for the most part, supported by participant 1, who commented, overall, I definitely think, though, that professional athletes they do make the right ethical decisions. Participant 6 agreed, replying, I think a lot of them usually tend to make ethical decisions. Participant 12 also replied that for the most part, the majority of them make ethical decisions. Now you can see here the information is provided in the sense that he gives you the number early on. We say 6, also 43%. Then he has a couple quotes and he indicates who these quotes came from. And therefore, you see the value in his work. Now also, you'll see here themes and frequencies for interview question number 1. Now this is what you saw earlier, and I just wanted to indicate here how it followed the narrative that he provided. Now, Dr. Susan Kristeniak, in her 2011 dissertation titled Exploring the Experiences of Complementary Therapy Nurses, a Qualitative Phenomenological Study, offered this. The comparison of keyword prevalence in the first group of interviewees, N equals 13, with the second round of interviews, N equals 3, was completed for each interview question to determine theoretical saturation of data collection. Once saturation was demonstrated with each question, with the completion of word prevalence analysis, all interviews, N equals 16, were analyzed for node identification and theme immersion. So you can see, here's how she put her information in a narrative. Now you see the table. You saw this early in this presentation, but now perhaps it fits a little bit better because you can see the participants 1 through 13 and 14 through 16. Now, Majid Al-Makwalbi in 2013, in his dissertation titled Perceptions of ICU Stakeholders Towards Nurse Staff Levels in Omani Hospitals, a qualitative case study, provided this information, which you saw earlier about research question number 1, the interview questions, which aligned with research question number 1, the type of data, open-ended type data came from the questions, and then the analysis. Here he provided, during the interviews, participants made 38 comments about ICU staffing. Stakeholders were free to make as many or as few comments as they felt appropriate. As shown in Figure 7, 43% of the stakeholders, or 23, said their ICUs did not have a sufficient number of nurses because of the heavy patient workload. 37% said there was a shortage of qualified nurses, N equals 20. Another 13%, N equals 4, share that non-nursing responsibilities, such as answering phone calls, portering, cleaning, and or dispatching medicine contributes to the shortage. Now here you can see he put in his numbers opposite. He put in the percentages first and then the number. I tend to believe that having the number first and then the percentage is the best way to go, but as I've been telling you throughout pretty much the entire lesson strategy, there's no one correct way. Whatever's going to be working good for you and your dissertation, chair and your committee members, is fine as long as all the information is there. Now in this lesson strategy, I gave some ideas on presenting qualitative themes. It's going to be dependent upon how many central research questions you have, if you have sub-questions or not. Now, it's also going to be dependent upon if you're doing a case study, phenomenological study, or any other of the different research designs. So you have to make sure whatever approach you're going to do in relating your themes is logical, sequential, and as I indicated before, try to stay consistent on how you design one theme to the next theme and present the other themes that follow. So that way it makes it easier for you to write and the reader to understand. I also shared 3 examples from 3 of my mentees who have gone on to graduate. You're welcome to download their dissertations and see their entire chapter 4. Perhaps it'll help give you insights on how to do your own work better. As you can see here, we just completed lesson number 4 of 12, which is part 2 of presenting qualitative themes. Now I'm going to go next in the lesson series in case you're going to follow that path. The next lesson will be lesson 5 of 12, which will be still about qualitative data. That's going to be part 3 of 5 because I have 5 different lessons all related to qualitative data. In that lesson, I'm going to discuss things you wish you learned in your research courses. Perhaps these will give you some tips and strategies as you're going through this lesson plan for chapter 4 on things to keep in mind that maybe you didn't learn or maybe it was shared with you but you just don't remember it. So you'll be ready to go for that in a few minutes. One of my famous sayings, or common sayings at least, is communicate, communicate, communicate. Then communicate just a little bit more. I encourage you to communicate with your dissertation chair. If you're at the stage right now, you're working on chapter 4, I suggest perhaps you write one theme, then share it with your dissertation committee members, and then take that theme and just repeat it for the other ones. That'll help you to make sure that you're making great progress, that your committee dissertation chair is in alignment with you, and you're getting all the help you need. Remember, communicate, build the relationship with your committee at this point, and make sure that they're aware of everything that you're doing, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Support and substantiate each theme in chapter 4. By doing that, you'll be sure that your chapter 4 will come out great. Remember, provide a narrative, give that justification, and substantiate how each theme was generated. Then repeat, repeat, repeat for each individual theme. I encourage you, if you need some help, go to www.drrichschuttler.com, look under Taking the B Out of ABD, look at the different webinars that I'm providing that are free, or if you need help, just send an email to me. I'll be happy to reply to you. Thanks again, and I hope you found this lesson informative and that overall the program will be helpful to you in producing your own chapter 4 in your significant and substantial dissertation.